Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin tonight with Australia, a country shaken by horror. A mass shooting at Bondi Beach is being called Australia's worst terror attack ever. We'll tell you who was behind it and why it has sparked a blame game between Israel and Australia. In India, the Messi GOAT tour became messy with a Y, complete with chaos, questions and criticism. In China, the economic engine is sputtering. Growth stalled in November. The IMF has some recommendations, but Xi Jinping has other ideas. In Ukraine, President Zelensky has offered a compromise. He is dropping his bid to join NATO, not like it was happening in a hurry, but this is a monumental shift. How will it change the war's trajectory? We'll discuss that. Back home, a public health emergency, toxic smog, has blanketed India's national capital once again. What are the policymakers doing to fix this? Prime Minister Modi is in Jordan. We'll tell you why this visit matters for India and West Asia. In Hong Kong, a powerful message from Beijing. Media tycoon Jimmy Lai is convicted for daring to take on the Chinese state. Across the Pacific, a political shift. Chile elects its most right-wing leader ever. Also, why Indians lost 136 crore rupees to Schengen visa rejections. And do we really need weight loss drugs for pets? Yes, they are a thing. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Rupee falls to a new record low, nearing 91 against the US dollar. The drop follows foreign fund outflows and a stalemate in US-India trade talks. The Indian rupee is Asia's worst performing currency this year. Traders say India's central bank, the RBI, may have stepped in to prevent a sharper fall today. The US Embassy in Dhaka issues a security alert ahead of Bangladesh's national elections. It warns of possible violence as political rallies gather momentum. The embassy urges US citizens to avoid public gatherings and stay alert in the coming weeks. Bangladesh is set to go to polls on the 12th of February. Flash floods kill scores of people in Morocco after torrential rains hit the Safi region. Local reports say more than 70 homes were flooded in the old city centre of Safi. Morocco's floods follow 7 years of drought, a pattern experts link to climate change. The West African bloc ECOWAS rejects Guinea-Bissau's military transition plan and demands a return to civilian rule. The bloc has threatened sanctions against the military regime. The military toppled President Embalo last month and installed a general as the interim leader of Guinea-Bissau. And pandas become the latest casualties in the diplomatic row between China and Japan. Japan's last pandas, Riri and Shinshin, will return to China in February. Their exit will mark an end to over 50 years of panda diplomacy between Beijing and Tokyo. It was supposed to be a great Sunday. Sydney's Bondi Beach was buzzing as usual. Hundreds had gathered to soak in the summer sun. Families with children, couples with elderly parents, all enjoying the day before the start of a new week. But everything was about to change. In the evening, 2 gunmen opened fire at the beach. Their target, a Jewish gathering. They fired more than 100 bullets in less than 10 minutes. As of now, 16 people have been killed in this attack. Around 40 are injured and hospitalized. It is the worst terror attack in Australia's history, an attack clearly triggered by anti-Semitism. But there is talk of an ISIS angle as well. We'll unpack the motive and the politics around it. But first, let's tell you what happened. Yesterday was the first day of Hanukkah. It's one of the biggest Jewish festivals on the calendar. It's the Jewish Festival of Lights. To celebrate this day, a special event was organized. In fact, let me pull up the map for you. You can see the Bondi Beach right at the bottom. At the back of the beach is Archer Park. This is where the Jewish event was organized. At around 5 p.m. on Sunday, the program started. Dozens of people began streaming in.
Okay, בסדר. גם עם החנוכיה אני אצלם אותך טוב, מה אתה?
Okay, thank you.
How many?
Why it's enough? Just to feel
אצלם אותך
Hanukkah.
טוב, מה אתה?
Okay, בסדר.
גם עם החנוכיה
You had food, you had activities for children, basically a very joyous mood. But soon things took a deadly turn. At around 6:40 p.m., a silver car pulled into the parking lot. Two armed men emerged from it, 50-year-old Sajid Akram and his 24-year-old son Naveed. They walked from their car to this footbridge. It's around 50 meters from the Hanukkah event, and from there, they opened fire. As gunshots rang, people began running. Dozens of people were hit by the burst of bullets. Eyewitnesses compared it to target practice. Soon the attackers split up. The father crossed the footbridge and walked towards the park. And this is where something stunning happened. An unarmed man crept up on the shooter. He flung himself on the shooter and snatched away the gun.
Because the police now come.
Yes, somebody got it. Somebody got it. Yeah.
Go away, go away. Hey guys, have you seen the gun?
All of this happened in a matter of minutes. At around 6:47 p.m., the two shooters reunited. The father did not have a gun anymore, so he tried to take cover on the footbridge. But by now, the police had arrived. The father was shot dead in the exchange of gunfire. The son kept firing until a bullet hit him. Take a look. By 6:50 p.m., the attack was over. 10 minutes of pure terror and evil. 10 minutes that Australia will never forget. By 8 p.m. local time, the police had raided the shooter's house, and by 9:30 p.m., they declared it a terror incident. Which brings us to today. All eyes were on Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He visited Bondi Beach to pay his respects. After that, he addressed the nation. The Prime Minister did acknowledge the anti-Semitic nature of the attack, but he did not offer solutions. Instead, he promised more gun control.
What we saw yesterday was an act of pure evil, an act of terror, an act of anti-Semitism, an attack on the first day of Hanukkah targeted at the Jewish community. A dark day in Australia's history on what should have been a day of light. And I want to conclude finally by saying that the government is prepared to take whatever action is necessary. Included in that is the need for tougher gun laws. This afternoon at 4 o'clock I will put on the agenda of the National Cabinet tougher gun laws, including limits on the number of guns that can be used or licensed by individuals.
More gun control is always welcome. In this case, one of the shooters had a gun license. He was in possession of 6 guns. So certainly gun control should be discussed. But here's the thing. Australia already has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. They haven't had a mass shooting in 3 decades, which makes you wonder, are guns the problem or is ideology the problem? Because anti-Semitism has been soaring in Australia, especially after the Hamas attack on Israel. More than 1,600 attacks were reported from September 2024 to September 2025. In 1 year, 1,600 attacks. That's 3 times higher than before the Hamas attack. Australian Jews face 3 threats. First, from the neo-Nazis. Second, from the far left, who equate Israel's war crimes to all Jews. And third is from the Islamists, radicals who want to wipe out Israelis and Jews. The Jewish community says Australian Prime Minister Albanese ignored these threats and that his inaction is what led to Sunday's horror.
The day that we had, I suppose in many ways, warned government and higher authorities of the possibility and the risk, and it feels almost like we were unheard, almost invisible. And so today is the day of disbelief.
Look, I think the federal government has made a number of missteps on anti-Semitism. The federal government was very slow to come to grips with this issue. We haven't seen the leadership at a federal level that we have at a state level.
Israel has also joined the criticism. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is attacking Albanese. He says he had warned Canberra about such attacks.
4 months ago, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Australia. I told him, your policy encourages terrorism. It encourages anti-Semitism. You call for a Palestinian state, and you are essentially giving a reward to Hamas for the terrible massacre they committed on us on October 7th.
Netanyahu did write a letter in August, and he did warn Albanese about anti-Semitism. So he's right about that. But the rest? Well, the rest is a hard sell. Netanyahu is linking anti-Semitism to the recognition of Palestine. But the fact is, 2/3 of all countries in the world recognize Palestine. So are they all anti-Semitic? There is no denying that Albanese made mistakes, but his mistake was ignoring the rising hatred against Jews. His mistake was not cracking down on the hate speeches or the online vitriol or the neo-Nazi conspiracy theories. His mistake was not about Palestine or its recognition. As for the shooting, there are more angles to investigate. The police found an explosive device in the attacker's car. They also found some Islamic State flags. In fact, the Sun has been probed for ISIS links in 2019.
The Sun first came to attention in October 2019. He was examined on the basis of being associated with others, and the assessment was made that there was no indication of any ongoing threat or threat of him engaging in violence.
So the Sun was probed in 2019. The agencies concluded that he was not a threat, and then 6 years later he goes on a shooting rampage. This has triggered outrage, and understandably so. I know emotions are running high right now, but it's also important to keep this conversation pragmatic. You can acknowledge that anti-Semitism is rising. It is not politically incorrect. You can also blame radical Islam and the Islamic State. Both are significant challenges in Australia. It is not anti-woke to say these things. These are facts. What you cannot do is fight hate with more hate. For instance, Australian Muslims are being bashed online. But guess what? The man who disarmed the gunman was also a Muslim. His name is Ahmad al-Ahmad. He is the son of Syrian refugees, and he too was shot in this attack. So there's a message for everyone in this incident. For governments, don't put wokeness and political correctness over security. If you do, this is the result. And for people, don't let the terrorists succeed. If they try to divide, you try to unite. I'm sure more details will emerge from this investigation. The second shooter, the Sun, is in police custody. We'll be tracking all of it closely for you. The Salt Lake Stadium in Kolkata is no ordinary stadium. It is the largest football stadium in India and the second largest in the world. It can accommodate more than 85,000 people, and on Saturday morning it was packed to the brim. Not for a football match, but for a meet and greet. A meet and greet with one of football's greatest players, Lionel Messi. This weekend, the Argentinian superstar kicked off his GOAT tour in India. GOAT stands for the greatest of all time, G-O-A-T. The tour began on Saturday in Kolkata. The choice was obvious. This is a city that lives and breathes football. It stops for derby matches. It has neighborhoods rooting for Brazil and Argentina during the World Cup, which is why it was the first stop to showcase India's love for football. The city even unveiled a statue of Messi, a 70-foot tall statue. It did not look much like him to begin with, but that was not even the biggest of the problems. Soon, thousands of fans turned up to see the star. They paid a lot of money for it, from 4,000 rupees to 12,000 rupees per ticket. It's almost up to $130. Some paid more on the black market. Now, for context, this is more than half of what many Indians earn in a week. Some people flew across the country. Some stood in line for hours. Some even showed up on their wedding day just to see their footballing idol.
सबको पता है कोलकाता में मेसी आने वाला है. मेरा शादी है आज, शादी छोड़ के आए. उसके बाद भी मतलब एक्सपेक्टेशन फुलफिल नहीं हुआ. हाँ, उनका प्रेजेंस हम लोगों को अच्छा लगा, मेरे को अच्छा लगा, प्रेजेंस ही बहुत है मेरे लिए. लेकिन मतलब वो दूर से उतना मतलब एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं था, इतना खराब एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं था.
They barely got a glimpse of him because Messi walked out surrounded, not by footballers, not by children, not by players from the city's legendary clubs, but by a moving fortress of politicians, officials, celebrities, their families, their entourages and their phones. Anyone could have pretended to be Messi there, and you wouldn't know at all. He was a blur behind shoulders, a head bobbing between blazers.
The minimum ticket was 5K. And why were the VVIPs around Messi? We couldn't even see him. We couldn't even get a glimpse of him. So why was this scripted? I don't know. Why weren't the police taking action? I don't know anything. Everyone was furious. Everyone was very furious. I have nothing to say. I need Shatadru to give us the answer. We want the refund. We want the refund.
10 minutes later, Messi was gone. Some say it was less than 10 minutes, and it's not clear why he left so soon. According to some reports, his security was worried about the people surrounding him. According to others, his team was displeased with the organizers. Now, we cannot confirm the exact reason for his departure, but we can tell you that he left within minutes of arriving, and this left the fans angry.
The dream is here. Leo Messi in Kolkata again.
And the love that everybody has for him.
कभी खेले नहीं, लेकिन वो भी छाए हुए थे यहाँ.
The reaction was ugly. Chairs ripped out, bottles thrown, a canopy set on fire, people running onto the pitch. These were images that flashed across global media. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee apologized. The organizer has been taken into police custody. And let's be absolutely clear here, vandalism is not protest. Breaking a stadium is not justice. Anger may explain it, but it does not excuse or justify this behavior. No heartbreak gives you the right to destroy public property or endanger lives. Also, that's not the only issue here. The Kolkata leg was a mess. From there, Messi went on to Mumbai, Hyderabad and finally to New Delhi. His tour ended today in the national capital. Hyderabad went smoothly. Mumbai was like any other large-scale event. Delhi was delayed by fog but orderly. At least you could see him in the stadium amid all the smog. In all these events, Messi smiled. He juggled a ball, he signed jerseys, children played, photos went viral. It was all executed, you could say, better than Kolkata, and yet it felt a little odd. In Hyderabad, the government got flack for spending crores on this event, only for politicians to miss a pass. In Mumbai, fans booed the people surrounding Messi. They questioned why film stars were being felicitated in the middle of this. In most cities, Indian footballers were sidelined. Take Sunil Chhetri, for example. He is arguably India's best footballer. He posed with Messi, but the image was drowned in a sea of selfies with VIPs and political meet and greets. Everyone was holding up their phone as if this was their last chance at immortality. Also, a quick reality check here. Everyone said that Lionel Messi was going to play a match. Messi was never going to play here. His left foot is reportedly insured for $900 million. That foot is basically a national asset. It has better security than most airports. You don't risk it in a friendly. And Messi does not enjoy noise. He doesn't enjoy chaos. He enjoys one thing, and that is football. The only moments he looked truly happy were when a ball appeared without a press release, when a kid tried a nutmeg and got away with it, when nobody was dragging him into a frame to prove proximity to power. So I guess the question is, what was this GOAT tour about? It was definitely not a football tour. It was a photo tour, a who stood where tour, a very expensive selfie Olympics. Corporates paid crores, VIP packages sold out, stadiums full of people, and in the end, India did not put Messi in the spotlight, it put the spotlight on itself. Everyone wanted to stand next to the football star. We built a 70-foot statue, but we couldn't create a 10-minute moment where a footballer and his fans could just exist. Messi came, Messi smiled, Messi left, and 85,000 people went home with photos of a blurry glimpse of his hair. Because in India, even the GOAT can get lost in the crowd of VIPs. China's economy is struggling. The data from November is out and it is bad news across the board. Almost everything that could go wrong is going wrong. This might be the worst set of numbers reported this year. Factory output has dropped. It is now at a 15-month low. Retail sales are barely growing. Last month, they grew by just 1.3%. This is the slowest rate except for the pandemic years. And other sectors are not doing any better. Fixed asset investments fell by 2.6%. Fixed assets are infrastructure, machinery, buildings, stuff that companies need to grow their business and to expand their operations. This investment in fixed assets has dropped to negative territory. And that shows that businesses are not optimistic about growth. The biggest hit came from the property sector. Property investment has plunged by nearly 16%. Developers continue to struggle. Many apartments remain unsold, even when builders are slashing prices and offering discounts. Plus, debt is piling up. More importantly, confidence in the sector is running low. You see, prices of homes have been falling in China. Average prices have dropped for 6 straight months now. That should give people a reason to invest in real estate. Sales should pick up when prices are low, but that's not happening. The sector is showing no recovery. And this is a problem for China because real estate makes up a quarter of their economy. Today, it is pulling the entire system down. However, China's slump is not just about real estate. Something as basic as car sales is also running in negative territory. In November, car sales dipped by 8.5%. So this is not a one-sector slump. This is a wider structural issue. And there is only one bright spot: exports. China's exports have soared. This year, they have reported a trade surplus of $1 trillion. So exports are still firing, but everything else is down. And what is Beijing's response? What are they doing to revive the economy? Chinese officials say that they will boost demand, they will support consumption and increase household income. Basically, they will put more money in the hands of people. Just one problem, though. We've heard this before. China made similar promises in the past. It also rolled out subsidies, but the impact has been limited. The IMF has raised red flags. The IMF is the International Monetary Fund. It believes that China can no longer rely on just exports. The economy needs to pivot, needs to start focusing on domestic consumption.
The second largest economy in the world, China is simply too big to generate much growth from exports, and continuing to depend on export-led growth risks furthering global trade tensions.
The advice makes sense because look at what's happening around the world. Countries are raising tariffs on Chinese imports. Beijing got some relief from Trump's trade barriers, but elsewhere, there's a growing threat of tariffs. Countries like France and Mexico say that they want to protect their industries, so they may impose tariffs on China. There are enough indications for China to change course and think of an alternative strategy. But it seems Xi Jinping has no appetite for radical reform. He wants to contain spending instead. Recently, President Xi held a meeting with top officials and he issued them a warning. Let me quote from what he said. All plans must be based on facts, aiming for solid, genuine growth without exaggeration and promoting high-quality, sustainable development. Those who act recklessly and aggressively without regard for reality, impose excessive demands or deploy resources without careful consideration must be held strictly accountable. So Xi Jinping wants tighter controls, no big stimulus or waste. Experts say this won't be enough. Global agencies like the IMF suggest structural reform. They say that China should fix the property crisis. It should lift consumer confidence and reduce state control. Because China's problem is not spending. China's problem is the lack of trust across the board. Chinese people are saving more and spending less. Companies are pulling back from investment and investors are cautious. They're not ready to place big bets. These are not short-term dips. They point to deeper cracks in the system and a loss in confidence. Until China reforms, this slowdown will continue and it will become harder to reverse.
Але ви за Україну. Україну смерть.
Also when the peace comes,
NATO countries.
Why did Russia invade Ukraine? If you ask most people, they will say NATO. Ukraine wanted to join NATO, but Russia wanted Ukraine to be neutral. This was the starting point for the ongoing war, one of the biggest and most contentious issues. Well, maybe not anymore. Ukraine's President Zelensky has made a major concession. He has dropped his demand for a NATO membership.
Ukrainian conditions, from the very beginning, or maybe not conditions, but more correctly, Ukraine's desire was to join NATO. And these were real security guarantees. Some partners from the United States of America and Europe did not support this direction. And that is why today bilateral security guarantees between Ukraine and the United States of America, namely Article 5-like guarantees from the United States of America for us and security guarantees from European colleagues for us, as well as from other countries, Canada, Japan, etc. These security guarantees for us are an opportunity to prevent yet another Russian aggression. And this is a compromise on our part.
So Zelensky does not want to join NATO. Instead, he wants bilateral guarantees from the US, from the European Union, and even from Canada and Japan. And what sort of guarantees are these? Zelensky compared them to Article 5 of NATO. This article talks about collective defense. If one NATO member is attacked, all NATO members will respond together. An attack on one is an attack on all. That is the gist of NATO's Article 5. And Zelensky wants similar guarantees for Ukraine. So it's a climb down from before. Just listen to Zelensky over the years.
We are proving every day that we are ready to be in the alliance more than most, I repeat again than most, of the EU countries. We understand that NATO membership would ensure our security and our territorial integrity. This is also enshrined in the Ukrainian legislation, in the Constitution of Ukraine. There is no objective obstacle that would prevent the adoption of political decisions on the invitation of Ukraine to the alliance.
So what has changed? Well, NATO was always a stretch for Ukraine. You can only join the alliance through consensus, meaning every member must okay your entry. For Ukraine, that was not guaranteed. Reports say that at least 7 NATO members opposed Ukraine's membership. The likes of Hungary, Slovakia, Belgium, Spain and Slovenia. These countries do not want Ukraine in NATO. Even the US was a bit reluctant. In public, former President Joe Biden kept the door open, but he never made any concrete steps. Under Donald Trump, even the door is shut. The current president, Donald Trump, has made his position very clear. Ukraine cannot join NATO, and that is why Zelensky has made this U-turn. The question is, will it move the needle? Will it move Russia closer to a deal? Here's what the Kremlin has said.
Naturally, this issue of Ukraine's membership in NATO is one of the cornerstones, and of course, it is subject to special discussion. And this is the sense of a negotiation process that, I repeat it once again, we do not want to conduct in megaphone style.
A very measured reaction from Russia. It makes you wonder what is going on here. This was one of Moscow's stated war objectives, that Ukraine should not join NATO. This is what Russia wanted. After 3 years, Zelensky is agreeing to it. So why the caution? Because of 2 reasons. One, this is Zelensky's least risky concession. Just think about it. The US proposal requires him to give up Donbass. That's almost all of eastern Ukraine. The US says give it to Russia. It also requires him to downsize his military and to sell off natural resources, basically reduce his country to a broken state. Compared to that, this NATO concession is nothing, because he's conceding something he doesn't even have yet. He may not even have it in the foreseeable future. Also, this is not an unconditional offer. Zelensky wants bilateral guarantees in return. He wants the US to sign a mutual defense treaty with Kiev, a treaty that is passed and ratified by the US Senate, a treaty that will outlast Donald Trump's presidency. As far as concessions go, not a big one. Secondly, the situation on the ground has changed. In 2022, Russia did not control 20% of Ukraine. They did not have a friendly president in the White House, but in 2025, they have both. So chances are Russia will want to drive home this advantage. Just like Kiev, they want a guarantee. The Russians want a guarantee that Ukraine will not turn to the West again. So the bottom line, yes, Zelensky's concession is symbolically significant, but it may not shift the needle on peace talks. Speaking of which, what's the update there? What's happening with the peace talks? All the action is happening in Berlin. That's where Zelensky met US negotiators yesterday. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff was there. So was his son-in-law Jared Kushner. Zelensky held talks with them for nearly 5 hours. And today, he met leaders from Europe. And this is crucial. So far, European leaders have backed Zelensky's hardline positions. Will they change that approach this time? The early indications are not good.
We have to understand that Donbas is not Putin's endgame. If it gets Donbas, then the fortress is down, and then they definitely move on with taking the whole of Ukraine. And you know, if Ukraine goes, then other regions are also in danger. We know this from the history, and we should learn from history.
So what's the next step? Ukraine and its allies are drawing up a peace plan. This proposal will be presented to Russia, and then it's Moscow's call. Rest assured, President Putin won't take a bad deal. A concession on NATO won't nudge him. He has several other sticking points. For starters, territory is non-negotiable. Putin already controls 88% of the Donbas region. Deal or not, he will take over the rest. Same with the so-called security guarantees. A binding treaty may not sit well with Russia. It could open the door for European or American soldiers in Ukraine. And that's a strict no for Putin. So as harsh as it sounds, Zelensky's options are clear. He must concede what he already has, not what he wanted to have. Let's see how the talks unfold throughout this week. Every winter, Delhi performs the same ritual. We wake up, we cough, we refresh an app that tells us the air quality / pollution level is severe. And this weekend was no different. The city woke up to a thick layer of smog. Visibility was reduced to a few hundred meters. AQI spiked to 500 in government meters. AQI is the air quality index. The reading should be below 100. In government meters, it crossed 500. In international ones, some readings showed 1,000. 1,000 AQI, imagine that. Anything above 400 is supposed to be severe, unbreathable. And we had 1,000. Flights were delayed because pilots could not see runways. Schools shifted to hybrid mode. Children logged into online classes because the world outside is medically unsafe. Let that sentence sink in. It was not medically safe to go out. And yet Delhi went to work. GRAP 4 measures have been implemented in the National Capital Region now. GRAP stands for Graded Response Action Plan. GRAP 4 or Level 4 is the highest level. Consider it like a red alarm continuously blaring. That's how bad it is. So what is the government doing? For now, construction is banned. There are limitations on workforce in public offices. And don't worry, the government has already figured out the problem. They have banned tandoors. A tandoor is a traditional clay oven. The government has banned them in Delhi because that was the problem all along. Not millions of cars, not coal plants, not the construction around the year, but remove the tandoor and Delhi will breathe again. Irony aside, pollution is usually discussed in numbers, AQI, PM 2.5, WHO limits. We see graphs every year of how many cigarettes we are smoking just by living in Delhi. But no one talks about how it is living in it. You wake up with a sore throat. You go outside and your eyes are watery. You taste metal and you take a deep breath. Your city looks like a low-budget apocalypse film. And here's the most telling detail. Foreign governments are warning their citizens about Delhi's air. Think about that. Countries are issuing advisories, like this is a conflict zone or a disease breakout. But the citizens of Delhi, well, they adjust. They go about their business. And that's the real horror. Delhi's air right now is not just bad, it is off the charts. We are breathing air that global health standards would not allow anywhere. It doesn't just sit in your lungs, it slips into your bloodstream. And yet the city carries on. We have learned to live inside a public health emergency as if it were weather. That's the part that should worry us all. Because outrage requires belief, a belief that things can be different. But Delhi pollution has become a seasonal certainty, like winter itself. Everyone knows it's coming. Everyone knows what could be done. Yet everyone knows that next year nothing will change. Every year governments announce emergency measures. Every year officials blame wind patterns, moisture, geography, farmers, Diwali, cars, construction, everything except the one thing that matters, political will. So right now, New Delhi does not just have a pollution problem, it has a priority problem. Because when a city learns to live in toxic air, when it's really learned, what it's really learned is this. Our lives can be inconvenienced, our lungs can be sacrificed. So winter will pass, the smog will lift, the outrage will fade, but the damage won't go away. The damage settles in our lungs and our bodies. It's time we take it seriously and call for accountability. Prime Minister Modi has begun a major foreign tour. It's a 3-nation visit across West Asia and Africa. Prime Minister Modi landed in Jordan today. He will visit Ethiopia and Oman next. This visit will feature several firsts. The Prime Minister he's the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Jordan in 40 years. In Ethiopia, he will address a joint session of Parliament, becoming the first Indian leader ever to do so. In Oman, the focus will be on a key milestone. India and Oman will mark 40 years of diplomatic ties. Through these visits, New Delhi is pushing for deeper partnerships with regional players. In the past, Prime Minister Modi has called West Asia a quote-unquote civilizational partner and the Gulf India's maritime neighbors. India wants a say in shaping outcomes in the region, and this tour is an effort in that direction. Here's a report.
West Asia is on edge. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just landed in the region. It's a three-nation tour. PM Modi's first stop is Jordan. He'll visit Ethiopia and Oman next. This isn't just a routine visit. It comes at a tense moment for the region and the world. Jordan is a key partner. India's trade with Jordan remains strong, and political ties are growing. This is also the year that marks 75 years of diplomatic relations. The last time an Indian Prime Minister landed in Jordan was 4 decades ago. This backdrop makes PM Modi's first full bilateral visit special. 3 issues will dominate the agenda: terrorism, food security, and peace in West Asia. Jordan plays a big role in the Israel-Palestine peace process. It's also a stable voice against radicalization and extremism. That's why India wants closer coordination. Reports say the recent terror attack in Australia can come up during the talks. So will the Gaza conflict and the growing threats of terrorism worldwide. But this visit is also about securing India's food supply. Here's why that matters. India imports fertilizers from Jordan and a big chunk of phosphoric acid. It is used to make fertilizers at home. On this front, India and Jordan already run a joint venture. It's worth $860 million, and it supplies a large share of India's needs. With food prices rising, this partnership is critical. It ensures Indian farmers get what they need, without depending on unstable global markets. The visit will also focus on defense. India and Jordan signed a defense pact in 2018. The two sides could discuss ways to expanding that. The Prime Minister's next stop is Ethiopia. This will be his first official visit there. He'll address a joint session of Ethiopia's parliament and meet Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. India is standing with the global south. That's the message the Prime Minister will strive to convey in Ethiopia. His final stop will be Oman. The visit marks 70 years of diplomatic ties. PM Modi will meet the Sultan. He'll also speak to the Indian community in Muscat. Oman has a large Indian diaspora. The community has played an instrumental role in building strong economic and cultural bridges. So why does this tour matter now? Because West Asia is shifting. The region is volatile. Power equations are changing. And India wants a seat at that table. In the past, PM Modi has sought to reframe his relationship with the region. He has called West Asia a civilizational partner, and the Gulf states maritime neighbors. This wasn't just a metaphor, it was a message. India is seeking shared sea lanes, shared risks, as well as shared responsibilities from the Indian Ocean to the Arabian Sea. There are millions of Indians living across West Asia, which is why PM Modi calls it a home away from home. PM Modi's outreach is also about protecting that community and building long-term influence in the region. So yes, this visit is diplomatic, but it's also strategic. India is no longer a silent observer in West Asia. It wants to play a role in shaping outcomes.
Hong Kong is back in the headlines, this time for a court verdict, a verdict that tells the story of Hong Kong. The verdict is against a man called Jimmy Lai. He's a media tycoon, a democracy campaigner, and one of Beijing's most consistent critics. Today he was found guilty. Guilty of what? Of colluding with foreign forces and of publishing seditious material. These are crimes that could send him to prison for life. Now, to give you some context, this verdict did not come out of nowhere. Jimmy Lai has been a target for years. Long before this trial, he was running a public campaign. This was against Beijing's growing control over Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai opposed it through his newspaper. The newspaper was called Apple Daily. This paper was founded in 1995. It challenged Beijing's official narrative and it sided openly with democratic values. That made Jimmy Lai popular with the readers, but deeply unpopular with the regime. It put him on a collision course with Beijing. Then came the protests of 2019. Millions of Hong Kong residents took to the streets. They were protesting against a proposed extradition law, a law that would have sent suspects to China. For many in Hong Kong, that crossed a red line because China's courts are controlled by the Communist Party. They're not known for due process. So people protested. It became a movement. Jimmy Lai backed the movement and those protests. Beijing responded with a crackdown. In 2020, China imposed a national security law on Hong Kong. And this law was so broad that it made dissent a crime. It carried severe penalties, including life imprisonment. Weeks later, Jimmy Lai was arrested and his newspaper was forced to shut down. Prosecutors say Lai had called for foreign sanctions on China. They cited articles, text messages, and meetings with US officials. Lai has denied those allegations, but the court did not believe him. It said Jimmy Lai never stopped trying to undermine the Chinese state, and today he was found guilty on all counts. This verdict is a blow to Hong Kong. In fact, the second blow in 2 days. On Sunday, the city's last major opposition party disbanded. It's called the Democratic Party. For 3 decades, it was the flagship of opposition politics. It swept elections and pushed for democratic reform. But yesterday, it voted to dissolve itself. Do you know why? Because Beijing left them no choice. Chinese officials and middlemen approached senior party members. They told them to disband or face arrest. On Sunday, they disbanded, and this pattern extends beyond politics and media. We told you what happened last month. A major fire killed at least 160 people in Hong Kong. It was one of the deadliest tragedies in decades. People demanded accountability. China responded not with answers but with arrests. Authorities used the sedition law against people who raised their voice, against people who asked why so many had died. And this is the message now. Criticize Beijing and risk arrest. For those who followed China over the years, none of this is surprising. China has spent decades building a culture of silence. It watches its people constantly. It controls them in more ways than one. It is paranoid about political freedoms. In fact, China pours billions of dollars into policing, surveillance, and censorship. In 2020 alone, China spent about $210 billion on internal security. That was more than their defense budget, nearly 3 times of what it spent a decade earlier. This was the money they spent on internal security, on policing its people. This year too, Beijing has increased its public safety spending. So Hong Kong was never meant to escape this reality. The national security law brought it in line, and now the courts enforce it. This is Xi Jinping's China, where stability means control, criticism is treated as a threat, and silence is the safest way to survive. Our next story takes us to Chile. It is a country in Latin America and one of the region's most stable democracies. That stability began in 1990. Before that, Chile was under a military dictatorship. It was under a man called Augusto Pinochet. His reign lasted for 17 years. But since his exit in 1990, every government in Chile has been democratically elected. This weekend, the people voted again. But this time, the results stood out and caught global attention because Chile has elected its most right-wing president ever. His name is José Antonio Cast. He has openly defended the Pinochet era. He has promised a hard line on crime and migration. Our next report tells you why this marks a major shift for Chile and the region.
For decades, Chile has been one of Latin America's most stable democracies. Since the end of military rule in 1990, power has changed hands through elections. This weekend, voters made a decisive choice at the ballot box. Chile elected José Antonio Cast as president, marking the country's most right-wing leader in 35 years of democracy. Cast secured nearly 58% of the vote, defeating left-wing candidate Jeanette Jara, who conceded soon after results became clear. The margin was decisive. Support for caste cut across regions, including areas that had long favored the left. Celebrations followed in the capital Santiago as supporters waved flags and filled the streets. For many voters, the election revolved around one issue above all others: security. Reports suggest Chile remains one of the safer countries in the region, but violent crime has spiked in recent years. Public fears have risen even faster, driven by organized crime, high-profile attacks, and a sharp rise in irregular migration. Cast built his campaign around those anxieties. He promised tougher policing, mass deportations of undocumented migrants, and tighter border controls. The message appealed to voters frustrated with rising insecurity and dissatisfied with the outgoing left-wing government of President Gabriel Boric.
We must take a firm stance against organized crime, impunity, and lawlessness. But we must also show great magnanimity in rebuilding coexistence, respect, and trust among our fellow citizens.
Cast is not a political newcomer. He is a lawyer, a former lawmaker, and the founder of Chile's Republican Party. But his victory has reopened difficult chapters in Chile's history. Cast has repeatedly defended the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Under Pinochet's regime, more than 40,000 people were killed, detained, or tortured. His brother served as a government minister during that era, and as a student, Cast campaigned for Pinochet to remain in power in the 1988 referendum. Those links worry many Chileans who fear a rollback of democratic norms. Cast has rejected those concerns.
The emergency does not mean authoritarianism at all. The emergency means one very simple thing: priority, urgency, and compliance.
This election carries weight beyond Chile's borders. It reflects a broader regional trend, as voters across Latin America are turning toward tougher, more conservative leaders in response to crime, migration, and economic pressures. Yet Cast's mandate comes with limits. His party does not control Congress. Any major reforms will require negotiation and compromise. Cast will take office in March. He inherits a divided electorate and high expectations, and a country weighing how to restore order while preserving the democratic path it chose more than 3 decades ago.
For our next story, let's talk about visa rejections. In 2024, Indians lost around 136 crore rupees on Schengen visas. That's over $16 million lost, $16 million spent on visas that never came through. Schengen, as you would know, is an area comprising 27 European countries. To visit these countries, some non-Europeans, including Indians, need what is called the Schengen visa. And a lot of visa applications were rejected. But despite these rejections, Schengen remains the top destination for Indian travelers this winter. Our next report brings you more.
There is a particular heartbreak that only Indian travelers understand. It happens not at the airport gate, not at immigration, but weeks earlier. The email subject line saying your Schengen visa application has been rejected. No explanation, no refund, no Christmas markets. Just a dent in your bank balance and to your travel plans. In 2024 alone, Indians lost over 136 crore rupees to Schengen visa rejections. That money didn't go into flights, hotels, museums or croissants. It vanished into paperwork. And yet, Indians have never travelled more. Let's start with the scale. In 2024, over 3 crore Indians travelled abroad. That puts India on track to become the 5th largest outbound travel market in the world by 2027, up from 10th place just a few years ago. Travel is no longer an occasional luxury, it's a lifestyle expense. More than 1 in 4 Indians taking personal loans are using them to travel. And the most surprising part? 71% of travel-linked loan borrowers are from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. But despite the heartbreak, Europe, especially Schengen, still has a magnetic pull. Winter travel data shows that Europe is now India's most desired cold season escape. Millennials lead this charge. They account for more than half of winter visa applicants, and half of them are choosing Schengen countries. For Gen Z, the numbers are rising fast too. In 2024, over 1.6 lakh Schengen applications from Indians were rejected. This resulted in a loss of 136 crore rupees in visa fees. Even as Europe dominates aspiration, Asia rules over reality. Nearly 2/3 of Indian travellers choose Asia as their primary destination. Quick visas, strong connectivity, predictable costs. Asia is efficient travel. You don't need 3 months of planning. You don't need embassy anxiety. You don't need to prove your worthiness as a tourist. And that matters especially for first-time international travellers. The US remains the most visited single country, driven by family ties, work and education. Australia is the sleeper hit, especially among Gen Y travellers who are increasingly choosing it over Europe. Indian travel is also becoming more individual. Most people still travel with partners, spouses, or friends. But Gen Z is rewriting the rulebook. They are far more likely to travel solo. They are more likely to travel with colleagues, and more likely to blend work and leisure into one fluid itinerary. Trips are shorter, usually under 2 weeks. For Gen Z, experiences are more important. Adventure sports, multi-country hops, self-drive rentals. So Indians are travelling more and differently. And yet, for many, getting a visa is an unpleasant experience, with month-long waits and hectic documentation, like proof of employment, income, and tax returns. All of this with no guarantee of success. Getting a visa in India is a gamble. Many are willing to play, but question is, should they have to?
It takes us into our homes and to our pets. For years, we have heard about weight loss drugs for humans. Names like Ozempic and Wegovy, they changed how millions think about obesity. Now that same science is being studied for an unexpected group, cats and dogs. Vets say pet obesity is no longer rare. In many countries, more than half of pet cats and dogs are overweight. That extra weight is raising the risk of diabetes, heart disease and shorter lifespans. For years, the solution to those problems was simple: controlled diet and exercise. But vets say that that's not always enough. So researchers are testing a new approach: weight loss drugs designed specifically for pets. In fact, one company is already testing it for overweight cats. The tests are still at experimental stage, but they could open a new chapter in how pet obesity is treated. Here's a report.
Weight loss drugs have changed how humans think about obesity. In just a few years, medicines like Ozempic and Wegovy moved from clinics to kitchen table conversations. Now, that conversation is reaching an unexpected place. Our pets. Veterinarians around the world are confronting a growing problem. Pets are getting heavier. Studies suggest that more than half of pet cats and dogs worldwide are overweight or obese. overweight pets face higher risks of diabetes, joint disease, heart problems, and liver disorders. Research also shows that overweight and obese pets tend to live shorter lives than their wiener counterparts. That is why researchers are now exploring a new option: drugs similar to those used in humans. GLP-1 medicines. GLP-1 is a hormone found naturally in the body. It helps regulate appetite and blood sugar. In humans, GLP-1 drugs slow digestion and promote a feeling of fullness. That leads to eating less and gradual weight loss. Veterinary researchers say the same appetite-regulating hormone system is present across mammals, including cats and dogs. That biological similarity is what has made animal trials possible. One company, Okava Pharmaceuticals, has launched a clinical study for overweight cats. Instead of injections, the drug is delivered through a small implant placed under the skin. The implant releases medication slowly over several months. The aim is slow, controlled weight loss, not rapid slimming. Cats in the study are closely being monitored for safety, behavior, and metabolic changes. Experts stress that this research is still in early stages. Cats process medicines differently from humans. Side effects like nausea or lethargy require careful monitoring. No GLP-1 drug is currently approved for routine veterinary use, and vets warn owners never to give human weight loss medicines to pets. Still, interest is growing. Market research estimates valued the global pet obesity management market at over $10 billion in 2024. That figure is projected to reach $14.5 billion by 2030. For vets, the focus remains clear. This is not about appearance. It is about health, mobility, disease prevention, and quality of life. For now, diet, routine, and veterinary guidance remain the foundation. But the science suggests a future where medicine could play a supporting role, not as a shortcut, but as another tool in tackling a growing global problem.
Like I said, Lionel Messi's GOAT tour reached Delhi for the final stop on his whirlwind visit. But fans online had a big question. Thanks to pollution, Delhi's visibility is down to a few meters. So could anyone actually see Messi inside the stadium? Thankfully, they could. Brave fans risked their lungs to gather at the Arun Jaitley Stadium. They did not see Messi play a game of football, but thankfully, he did not turn up with an N95 mask. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Romania, thousands protest against abuse of power in the judiciary. In Hungary, Santas and Speedos race through the capital. And in Egypt, officials unveiled two massive statues of prominent pharaohs. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2011, the United States officially ended the Iraq War. It was marked by the lowering of the US military flag in Baghdad. The war had started in March 2003. It was fought over false claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. The fighting cost the US over $1 trillion. It also claimed the lives of 100,000 Iraqis. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.